Maya's fingernails tore against wet earth, blood mixing with soil beneath the midnight roses. The humming came again, soft, childlike, muffled by dirt and wood. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she clawed deeper, thorns from overhanging vines ripping through her uniform sleeves. The underground rose garden sprawled around her like a gothic nightmare, moonlight barely penetrating the twisted maze of stone pillars and ancient trellises. "Hold on," she whispered, though she didn't know if anyone could hear. "Please hold on." The melody drifting up through the earth froze her blood. It was the same lullaby her mother had hummed 20 years ago, before the bad men came, before Maya learned what it meant to be trapped and voiceless. Her hands moved faster, driven by something deeper than fear, a primal terror that merged past and present into one suffocating moment. Her fingers struck wood, a coffin lid, small, child-sized. "No, no, no." Maya's voice cracked as she scraped away the remaining dirt, her heart hammering against her ribs. The brass handle gleamed dully in the weak light. She grabbed it, pulled, and the lid creaked open. Ethan Whitmore lay inside, his small face pale as marble, lips tinged blue. His chest barely moved, his eyes were closed, and the humming had stopped. "Ethan!" Maya dragged him up, his body limp and cold in her arms. She pressed her ear to his chest, a heartbeat, faint, but there. She tilted his head back, breathed air into his lungs, compressed his chest. "Come on, baby, come on." One breath, two, compress. "Breathe." Ethan coughed weakly, his eyes fluttered. Maya sobbed with relief, clutching him against her chest. "You're okay. You're okay now." "Ethan!" The scream cut through the garden like a knife. Vanessa Whitmore emerged from the rose-covered archway, her evening gown pristine despite the damp ground, her makeup perfect despite the hour. She ran toward them, heels clicking on stone, arms outstretched. "My baby! My baby!" Maya looked up, still holding Ethan, and something cold slithered down her spine. Vanessa's gown was spotless. Not a speck of dirt, not a torn hem. No sign she'd been frantically searching. And her eyes, for just a fraction of a second before the tears came, flickered with something that looked almost like annoyance. "What happened?" Vanessa seized Ethan from Maya's arms, checking him over with theatrical urgency. "What did you do to him?" I heard humming. I dug him up. Someone buried him." "You heard humming?" Vanessa's voice sharpened. "In the middle of the night? What were you doing out here, Maya?" Before Maya could answer, Richard Whitmore appeared, half-dressed in hastily pulled-on slacks and an unbuttoned shirt. His hair stood in every direction. "What's going on?" "Vanessa, I heard you scream." His eyes found Ethan, and his face drained of color. "Oh God, Ethan!" "She found him," Vanessa said, the words carefully neutral but heavy with implication. "Buried, out here." Richard stared at Maya, confusion and gratitude warring across his features. "You saved him." "I heard there was humming. I followed the sound." "How fortunate," Vanessa murmured, holding Ethan close, "that you just happened to be in exactly the right place." Red and blue lights strobed across the roses 10 minutes later. Detective Ramirez emerged from the police cruiser with 2 officers, his weathered face set in professional skepticism. He surveyed the scene, the open grave, the small coffin, Maya's torn and bloodied hands, Vanessa's immaculate appearance, Richard's disheveled confusion. "Ms. Collins," Ramirez said, pulling out a notebook, "you want to walk me through what happened here?" Maya explained again, aware of how strange it sounded. She'd been unable to sleep. She'd heard humming. She'd come out to the rose garden and started digging. "And you just knew where to dig?" Ramirez's pen hovered over the page. "The sound, it was coming from there. I could hear it." "Anyone else hear this humming?" Silence. Vanessa shook her head slowly. Richard looked between Maya and the detective, uncertain. "Interesting," Ramirez said. He crouched beside the grave, examining the disturbed earth. "This soil's been moved recently, but there's another patch over here, see? Smoother, like someone practiced first." Maya's stomach clenched. She hadn't noticed that. One of the officers called out, "Detective? Got a shovel here. Blade's been wiped clean." "Bag it," Ramirez said. He stood, brushing dirt from his hands, and fixed Maya with a long look. "I'm going to need you to come down to the station tomorrow. Answer some more questions." "But I saved him, and that's great," Real heroic. His tone suggested he wasn't sure about heroic at all. But someone buried that boy, and you're the only one who was conveniently here to dig him up. You understand my concern? Maya's throat tightened. This was wrong. All wrong. She looked at Richard, silently pleading for support, but he was focused on Ethan, checking his son's pulse, his breathing. Thank you for saving my boy, Richard said quietly, not meeting her eyes. We'll talk tomorrow. Vanessa said nothing. But as the paramedics loaded Ethan into the ambulance and the crowd dispersed, she turned back to Maya. Their eyes met across the blood-stained roses. Vanessa's expression was ice-cold, utterly devoid of gratitude. The message was clear. You should have stayed out of this. Maya couldn't sleep. The image of Ethan's blue lips haunted her, mixed with memories of her own childhood, locked in that basement, her mother's humming fading as the social workers took Maya away. She kept seeing Vanessa's eyes, that flicker of annoyance. At 3 a.m, she heard footsteps, soft, deliberate. The creak of the back door. Maya slipped out of bed, pulled on her robe, and followed. The rose garden beckoned, shadows thick between the pillars. Moonlight painted everything in shades of gray and black. She moved quietly, years of surviving bad situations, teaching her how to become invisible. A shadow moved between the roses. Tall, human. Maya's pulse quickened. She crept closer, staying low. The figure stopped beside a shallow pit, another freshly turned patch of earth Maya hadn't noticed before. The figure held a shovel. "Hey!" Maya shouted before she could think better of it. The figure spun. A mask covered their face, plain white, featureless. They lunged forward, shovel raised like a weapon. Maya dodged sideways, tripped on a root, went down hard. The shovel blade scraped past her ankle, cutting through her robe. She grabbed a fallen rock, swung wildly, connected with something solid. The attacker grunted, stumbled back. Maya scrambled to her feet, raised the rock again. The attacker hesitated, then turned and fled into the darkness, vanishing between the stone columns. Her hands shook as she lowered the rock. On the ground where the figure had stood lay a dropped glove. Maya picked it up, brought it to her nose. A scent clung to the fabric, floral, distinctive, expensive. She'd smelled it before. She handled the laundry for the entire household. She knew everyone's signature scents. This was Sophie's perfume. The rare imported oil Vanessa had given her for her birthday. Sophie, Ethan's 14-year-old sister. Morning light made everything seem less sinister, but Maya's nerves were frayed to breaking. She'd spent the night turning over possibilities, none of them good. Sophie was just a girl, quiet, gentle. She loved her little brother. Didn't she? Maya found Sophie in the breakfast room, sitting close to Vanessa, picking at toast. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. "Good morning," Maya said carefully, setting down fresh coffee. Sophie flinched. She looked up at Maya with wide, frightened eyes, then quickly looked away. "Sophie's not feeling well," Vanessa said smoothly. "The stress of last night. It's been very traumatic for all of us." "Of course," Maya said. She watched Sophie's hands. There were no scratches, no bruises, nothing to suggest she'd been in a fight. But the perfume didn't lie. Detective Ramirez arrived after breakfast. He questioned everyone separately. When it was Maya's turn, he led her to Richard's study and closed the door. "Tell me about your background, Mrs. Collins," he said, settling into a chair. "My background? You came to the Whitmores 3 months ago. Before that?" He consulted his notes. "Foster care. Juvie for breaking and entering when you were 16. Expelled from 2 high schools. Some pretty rough patches." Maya's face burned. "I was a kid. I made mistakes. I've worked hard to—" "I'm not judging," Ramirez said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I'm just trying to understand. You've had a difficult life. Maybe you wanted to feel important. Be the hero. Save someone the way nobody saved you. That's not— I didn't bury him." "But you knew exactly where to dig." "I heard the humming." "Right. The humming nobody else heard." Ramirez closed his notebook. "Stay available, Ms. Collins. Don't leave town." After he left, Maya stood in the study, anger and fear churning in her stomach. They thought she did this. They actually thought she buried a child just to dig him up and play hero. She had to find proof. Real proof. That afternoon, a uniformed officer appeared with Richard and Vanessa. "Miss Collins, we need to check your room," the officer said. "Why?" "Routine," Ramirez said, appearing behind them. "You don't mind, do you?" She did mind. She minded very much. But refusing would look worse. She led them to her small room on the 3rd floor, her heart pounding. The officer went straight to her locker. "It's unlocked," he said. "I never leave it unlocked." He opened it anyway. Inside, in plain view on top of her folded clothes, sat a prescription bottle of sedatives, and beneath it, a stack of photographs. The officer pulled them out. They showed Ethan and Sophie, dozens of photos, some taken through windows, some zoomed in on their faces. They looked like surveillance photos. Obsessive. Disturbing. "Those aren't mine," Maya whispered. "Someone put those there." Ramirez examined the sedative bottle. "These are hospital grade. Same type used on Ethan." He looked at her with something like pity. "Ms. Collins, you're making this very difficult. I've never seen those before in my life." But it didn't matter. She could see it in their faces. They'd already decided. That evening, Vanessa held a household meeting. The staff gathered in the kitchen while she stood at the head of the table, Richard beside her, both of them looking grave. "I want to address the situation," Vanessa said, her voice soft and pained. "Maya has been with us for 3 months. She came highly recommended. But given her troubled past and the evidence that's come to light, I think we need to be very careful, very vigilant." "You think I hurt Ethan?" Maya couldn't keep quiet. "I saved him!" "Did you?" Vanessa's eyes were cold. "Or did you bury him, then get cold feet and dig him up?" Detective Ramirez suggested that might be what happened. A cry for help, a desperate need for attention. "That's insane." "You have sedatives in your room," Richard said quietly. "Photos of my children." "Maya, if you're struggling, if you need help." "I don't need help. I'm being framed." The other staff members shifted uncomfortably. Old Maria, the cook, wouldn't meet Maya's eyes. Jose, the driver, looked troubled but said nothing. That night, Maya couldn't take it anymore. She had to find answers. She crept down to the staff quarters in the oldest part of the house, where storage rooms held decades of forgotten items. In the back of a cleaning closet behind old mops and buckets, she found a loose plank in the wall. Her fingers, still bandaged from digging up Ethan, pried it free. Inside was a dusty metal box. Inside that, an encrypted USB drive, printed photos, and documents in plastic sleeves. Maya took everything to her room. Her heart hammered as she plugged the USB into her old laptop. Most files were locked, but one folder opened. Newspaper clippings. Wealthy heir dies in tragic pool accident. Oil tycoon's daughter vanishes, presumed dead. Real estate mogul's family destroyed by mystery illness. Different families, different years, different cities, but all wealthy, all involving dead or missing heirs. Maya flipped through the printed photos. Passport scans. The same woman's face under different names. Elena Cortez, Elena Morrison, Elena Dupont. And one photo that made Maya's blood freeze. Vanessa. Or someone who looked exactly like Vanessa, but in a passport issued 8 years ago under the name Elena Cortez. She spread out the documents with shaking hands. Background checks, financial records, marriage certificates. Vanessa had married into wealth before, multiple times. And each time, the heirs had died in tragic accidents. Ethan and Sophie weren't the first children she'd tried to eliminate. They were just the latest. A sound in the hallway made Maya freeze. Footsteps. She shoved everything into her pillowcase and killed the laptop screen. Her door opened. Jose, the driver, stood there, his face pale. "Maya," he whispered urgently. "We need to talk. Downstairs. Now." "Jose, what?" "Please, I know things. About Mrs. Whitmore. About what she did before she came here." They went down to the laundry room in the basement, a humid, cluttered space that smelled of detergent and damp concrete. Old washing machines lined one wall. Fuel containers for the backup generator sat in the corner. "I saw her," Jose said, his voice low and urgent, "the night Ethan was buried. I saw her coming from the Rose-Garden. Her dress was dirty then. She changed before the police came." "Why didn't you tell Detective Ramirez?" "Because I'm afraid He glanced at the door. "She's not who she says she is." I looked into her past, the same way you did. I found Elena Cortez. I found the dead heirs. I was going to tell you earlier, but I was scared. But I can't let her hurt those children. The lights went out. Maya's breath caught. Jose. Someone locked the door, he said, voice tight with panic. She heard him cross the room, rattle the handle. We're locked in. Smoke, acrid and thick. Maya smelled it before she saw the orange glow under the door. Fire! Jose shouted. Maya's mind raced. The windows. There were small windows near the ceiling. She grabbed a chair, climbed up, tried to force one open. The frame was painted shut. Behind her, Jose screamed, not from fear, from pain. Maya jumped down, coughing, eyes streaming. She could barely see through the smoke. Jose! She found him on the floor, clutching his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. In the dim red glow from the fire, she saw the knife handle protruding from his ribs. Someone was in here, he gasped. In the dark. Hold on. Maya tore off her shirt, pressed it against the wound. The smoke was getting thicker. The fire was spreading. They had minutes, maybe less. She dragged Jose toward the window. Her lungs burned. Her eyes couldn't focus. She grabbed a wrench from a tool rack and smashed the window. Glass shattered. Cool air rushed in, feeding the fire behind them, but giving them a path out. Come on. She pushed Jose up first, his blood slicking her hands. He was too heavy, too weak. She climbed up beside him, wedged herself under his arms, and shoved him through the window with everything she had. He tumbled onto the grass outside. Maya pulled herself through after him, felt flames lick her ankle, and fell onto the ground, gasping and coughing. Jose's eyes were open, staring at the sky. Blood pooled beneath him. No, no, no. Maya pressed on his wound, but she knew. She knew before she checked his pulse. He was gone. She heard shouts, running feet. Someone was calling 911. Maya knelt beside Jose's body, covered in his blood and ash, and felt something inside her crystallize into pure, cold rage. This wasn't random. This was systematic elimination. Anyone who got too close to the truth died. She wasn't going to be next. While the household dealt with the fire and Jose's body, while police swarmed and questions flew and Vanessa played the horrified hostess, Maya slipped away. She followed a hunch based on the estate blueprints she'd glimpsed in the documents. The mansion had a disused wing, sealed off after an electrical fire decades ago. Servants' quarters, old pantries, storage rooms no one visited anymore. Maya found the door hidden behind a tapestry. It opened easily. Someone had oiled the hinges recently. Inside, the corridor was cold and dark. She used her phone's flashlight to navigate. At the end of the hall was another door. Behind that, stairs leading down to a basement level that wasn't on any official floor plan. The air grew colder as she descended. At the bottom was a heavy door marked cold storage. Maya's hands trembled as she pushed it open. The freezer room was small, barely 10 feet square, and in the center, wrapped in clear plastic and coated in frost, was a body. A woman, middle-aged, same hair color as Vanessa, same facial structure, but subtly different, a mole on the wrong cheek, glasses, a fuller figure. Maya found the papers in a waterproof sleeve taped to the plastic. Marriage certificate, medical records, all identifying this woman as Vanessa Margaret Whitmore, the real Vanessa, Richard's first wife, Sophie and Ethan's biological mother. Dead for at least 2 years based on the frost accumulation. The woman upstairs, the one playing grief-stricken stepmother, was Elena Cortez, a serial impostor who killed heirs for inheritance money. She'd murdered the real Vanessa, taken her place, and now she was working her way through the children. And Maya was the perfect scapegoat. She took photos of everything, backed them up to the cloud, and fled the freezer room. Her mind raced. She needed to get to Detective Ramirez, show him the evidence, make him understand. But when she emerged from the hidden wing, 2 officers were waiting in the main hall. "Ms. Collins," one said, "Detective Ramirez wants to see you now." They escorted her to Richard's study. Ramirez sat behind the desk, looking tired and frustrated. Vanessa stood by the window, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. "Sit down, Maya," Ramirez said. "I need to show you something." "The fire started in the laundry room," Ramirez interrupted. "Jose Delgado died from a stab wound, but the fire destroyed most of the physical evidence. However, several witnesses saw you going down to the basement with Jose shortly before the fire started. Because he wanted to tell me about Vanessa. Mrs. Whitmore, Ramirez corrected sharply. And that's interesting, because Jose's family called me this afternoon. They said he'd been receiving threatening messages. Messages suggesting that if he didn't stay quiet about what he'd seen, something bad would happen. That wasn't me. The messages came from a burner phone. We found that phone in the trash bin outside your room. Ramirez stood. We also received results from Ethan's blood work. He was given a sedative, the same sedative found in your locker. I was framed. Look, I found... She reached for her phone to show him the photos, but Ramirez held up his hand. Additionally, he continued, hospital security footage shows a woman matching your build and height entering Ethan's room at St. Mary's the night before he disappeared. She was seen standing over his bed with a syringe. What? I was never at the hospital. The footage is grainy, but combined with everything else. Ramirez looked genuinely regretful. Maya Collins, you're under arrest for the attempted murder of Ethan Whitmore and the murder of Jose Delgado. The world tilted. Maya tried to run, but the officers were ready. They grabbed her arms, forced them behind her back. Handcuffs clicked into place. Wait, listen to me. Vanessa isn't Vanessa. She's Elena Cortez. She's a con artist who kills heirs. The real Vanessa is dead, frozen in the basement. Check the old wing, please. Ramirez's expression softened with something that looked like pity. Maya, you need help. Professional help. I hope you get it. No, you have to check. She's going to kill Ethan and Sophie. She's going to make it look like I did it. But they were dragging her toward the door. She saw Vanessa's face, composed and sorrowful, playing the traumatized victim perfectly. Their eyes met. Vanessa smiled. Just a little. Just enough for Maya to see. In the foyer, Richard waited with Sophie. He looked at Maya with betrayed confusion. If you ever cared about my children, he said, his voice breaking, tell me the truth. Did you hurt them? I'm trying to save them. Maya struggled against the officers. Please, Richard, she killed your wife. She killed the real Vanessa. She's going to kill your children and take everything. That's enough, Ramirez said. Take her to the car. They pulled her outside. The last thing Maya saw was Vanessa putting a comforting arm around Richard's shoulders, whispering poison in his ear. Sophie stood behind them, silent and pale, watching Maya with unreadable eyes. The patrol car pulled away from the Whitmore estate at sunset. Maya sat in the back, hands cuffed behind her, mind racing. Detective Ramirez was in the passenger seat, another officer driving. They were taking her to the station for processing. She had maybe an hour before she was locked in a cell. After that, Vanessa would be free to finish what she'd started. Ethan and Sophie would die in carefully staged accidents. The evidence would point to Maya. The story would be perfect. Deranged maid, traumatic past, desperate for attention. Maya had spent her childhood learning to survive impossible situations. This was just another locked room, another adult who didn't believe her, another system designed to keep her voiceless. But she'd learned something in those dark years. Survivors find a way. The hairpin was tucked into her braid, where they hadn't thought to look. She'd kept one there since she was 16, since the first time she had to pick a lock to escape a bad foster home. Her thumb hurt as she dislocated it slightly, an old trick, but it let her slip one cuff. She worked the hairpin into the lock mechanism. Click. The second cuff opened. She's quiet back there, the driver said. Good, Ramirez muttered, looking at his phone. Poor kid. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong life. They slowed for a turn. Maya tensed. She kicked the door handle at exactly the right moment. The door flew open. She tumbled out, hit the road rolling the way she'd learned in juvie, and came up running. Hey! Ramirez shouted. Stop! But Maya was already gone, vanishing into the wooded area bordering the estate. She knew these paths. She'd walked them dozens of times during smoke breaks, exploring, mapping escape routes without knowing why. Now she knew why. She ran through trees, jumped a creek, and emerged at the back gate of the Rose-Garden. Her lungs burned. Her ankle throbbed where the shovel had grazed it. But she kept moving. The underground entrance stood open, the stone well descending into darkness. Fresh footprints marked the damp earth around it. Vanessa was already down there. Maya descended the narrow steps, using her phone light to see the walls dripped with moisture. The smell of roses and wet earth grew stronger. At the bottom was a tunnel carved from limestone, reinforced with old timber Victorian-era construction, back when rich families built elaborate follies and secret chambers. This wasn't a folly. This was a tomb. The tunnel opened into a circular chamber, the underground heart of the rose garden. Roots penetrated the ceiling, and shallow excavations dotted the floor. Some were empty. Some contained rough wooden boxes. One coffin was open. Sophie lay inside, her chest rising and falling in drugged sleep. Another coffin sat beside her, lid closed. Maya knew without looking that Ethan was inside. Vanessa stood between them, still wearing her elegant evening wear, a shovel in her manicured hands. She was humming, the lullaby, Maya's mother's lullaby. "You're late," Vanessa said without turning around. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't make it. Let them go." Vanessa turned, and her face was completely calm, beautiful, serene. "I did quite extensive research on you, Maya. Did you know that? Before I placed you here, I needed someone with a troubled past, someone the police would find easy to suspect, but I wanted someone special, someone with resonance. You killed Jose. Jose was careless. He asked too many questions, like you." Vanessa tilted her head. "But unlike Jose, you're useful. You're the story, the damaged maid who couldn't save herself. So she tried to save these poor children by burying them alive. Tragic, really, a cry for help that went too far. No one will believe that. They already do, darling. The evidence is perfect. The timeline is perfect. And now you've escaped custody and returned to the scene of your crimes. When they find these children buried, and they will, eventually, after you've been caught trying to dig them up again, the story will be complete." Maya's hand found a gardening hook hanging on the wall. "I found the real Vanessa. I photographed everything. It's already uploaded to the cloud." Vanessa's smile didn't waver. "Darling, you've been unconsciously followed by surveillance for weeks. Every move watched, every action documented. By the time any lawyer looks at those photos, they'll see them in context. The desperate attempt of an unbalanced woman to deflect blame. Besides, who checks the cloud when you're shot trying to kill Detective Ramirez? That's your plan?" "Part of it." Vanessa pulled something from her pocket, a syringe. "First, you'll inject yourself with this, the same sedative you used on Ethan. Then you'll struggle, there'll be a fight, and sadly, I'll be forced to defend myself." She picked up the shovel again. "The blow to your head will be ruled self-defense, of course." Maya raised the gardening hook. "Or I could stop you right here." "With what? Garden tools?" Vanessa laughed. "I've planned 12 scenarios for this night. You were supposed to be arrested, but escape works too. In fact, it's better, more desperate, more proof of guilt." "Why?" Maya asked. "Why any of this?" "Because they have everything, and I had nothing." Vanessa's voice went cold. "Born poor, raised poor, told I was nothing. But I'm not nothing. I'm brilliant. I create perfect deaths, poetic accidents, and I take what they would have wasted." She gestured at the coffins. "Richard is weak. He'll grieve his children, turn to me for comfort, and eventually die in his sleep. Natural causes. I'll inherit everything. Then I'll move on to the next family. You're sick. I'm an artist." Vanessa stepped closer, syringe in one hand, shovel in the other. "And you're the final brush stroke." She lunged, Maya dodged, swung the gardening hook, caught Vanessa's wrist. The syringe flew across the chamber, hit the wall, shattered. Vanessa snarled and swung the shovel. Maya ducked, but the blade grazed her shoulder, sending pain shooting down her arm. She stumbled back, hit the irrigation pipe running along the wall. Water, the irrigation system. Maya grabbed the valve and twisted it. Water exploded from the pipes, flooding the chamber floor. Vanessa slipped, went down hard, and the shovel clanged against stone. Maya lunged for it, but Vanessa was faster. She kicked Maya in the ribs, and Maya fell, gasping. Vanessa grabbed the syringe's remains, the needle was intact, and jumped on Maya's back, forcing her face into the water, bringing the needle toward her neck. "Poetic," Vanessa hissed, drowned in her own tears. Maya reached back blindly, grabbed Vanessa's hair, and yanked hard. Vanessa screamed. Maya twisted, threw her off, and scrambled for the shovel. They both reached it at the same time, struggled. The blade swung wild. Maya let go suddenly, and Vanessa stumbled backward. Maya kicked low, swept Vanessa's legs. She fell, and Maya was on her, pressing Vanessa's face into the flooded floor, the same way Vanessa had tried to drown her. "How's the water?" Maya gasped. Vanessa thrashed, but Maya held her down, not to kill, just to subdue, just long enough. Sirens wailed above them. Lights swept through the chamber entrance. Police. Hands where I can see them. Maya let go of Vanessa and raised her hands. The children. Help the children. Officers flooded the chamber. Detective Ramirez appeared, gun drawn, taking in the scene. The coffins, the water, the two women. "She tried to kill them," Maya said, pointing at Vanessa. "She's Elena Cortez. Check her fingerprints. Check the freezer in the old wing. The real Vanessa Whitmore is there. This woman is an impostor. She's done this before. Killed heirs. Taken their money. There's a bunker beneath this chamber with all the evidence." Vanessa stood slowly, water dripping from her ruined dress. Blood trickled from her nose where she'd hit the ground, but even now she was composing herself, preparing the performance. "Detective," she said, voice shaking perfectly. "Thank God you're here. She was going to bury them. I found her and tried to stop." "Save it," Ramirez said. He looked at Maya. "When you escaped, I ran your story. The dead wife, the freezer. I sent officers to check. They found the body exactly where you said." Vanessa's face went blank. "We also found a hidden room behind the freezer," Ramirez continued, "full of documents, disguises, and detailed plans. 12 families, 12 fortunes, all mapped out. 2 officers grabbed Vanessa. She didn't resist, but she stared at Maya with undiluted hatred. "You think you've won?" Vanessa said. "You're still nothing. You'll always be nothing." Maya met her eyes. "Maybe, but I'm nothing with a pulse. Your victims can't say the same." They dragged Vanessa away. Paramedics rushed to Sophie and Ethan, checking vitals, administering reversal agents. Both children were alive. Ramirez approached Maya carefully. "You were right about everything, and I failed you. I let my own bias blind me. I'm sorry. Just make sure she never hurts anyone else," Maya said. Later, after statements and medical checks and the slow grinding of justice beginning, Maya stood in the rose garden one last time. Morning light turned the flowers, gold and red. Workers were already beginning to dismantle the underground chambers, filling them in, erasing the nightmare. Richard approached with Sophie and Ethan. Both children looked fragile, but alive. "Thank you," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was a fool. I should have listened. I should have protected them." "You didn't know," Maya said. "None of us really knew what she was capable of." Sophie stepped forward and hugged Maya tightly. "You saved us," she whispered. "You saved us even when everyone thought you were the monster." Ethan took Maya's hand. "Will you stay, please? We don't have a mom anymore, but we trust you." Maya looked at Richard. He nodded. "The position is yours, if you want it." "Though I understand if—" "I'll stay," Maya said, "for a while, until you find someone better." "There is no one better," Richard said simply. 3 months later, in a courthouse downtown, Elena Cortez sat in an orange jumpsuit, her perfect composure finally cracked. The prosecutor had just finished laying out the evidence. 12 families targeted, 8 dead heirs, millions stolen, lives destroyed. The judge asked if she had anything to say. Elena looked across the courtroom at Maya, who sat in the gallery between Sophie and Ethan. "She buried heirs for a living," Maya said quietly, speaking only to the children. "But she forgot. I was born knowing how to dig my way out." The judge sentenced Elena to life without parole. That afternoon, Maya drove Ethan and Sophie to the cemetery where the real Vanessa Whitmore had finally been laid to rest. They placed flowers on her grave, not roses, sunflowers, bright and alive. "She would have loved you," Sophie said, touching the headstone. "Our real mom, for saving us." Maya didn't know about that, but she knew this. The underground maze was being filled with concrete. The roses were being transplanted to the surface, where sunlight could reach them properly, and the Whitmore children were learning to smile again. As they drove home through the afternoon sun, Ethan fell asleep against Maya's shoulder, and Sophie hummed softly, not the old lullaby, but something new, something her own. The nightmares would take time to fade. The scars would never fully disappear, but they were alive, and they were free, and that was enough. That was everything. Maya glanced in the rearview mirror at the sleeping boy and the humming girl, and for the first time in her life, she felt something like peace. She'd spent her childhood buried under other people's cruelty. She'd spent her adulthood digging herself out. And now, finally, she was above ground, in the light, with people who needed her and saw her as more than her past. The roses still smelled sweet in her memory, but they no longer smelled like coffins. They just smelled like flowers, and that, Maya thought, was a kind of freedom, too. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button, drop a comment letting me know what you thought of Maya's journey, and give this video a like. Your support helps me bring you more thrilling stories like this. What should I cover next? Let me know in the comments below.